Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. Today on Sue's Healthy Minutes, it is time for another incredible It's the Bread story, and I am so excited for you to hear it. My guest today is Barbara Davis. Barbara emailed me a few months ago, and the first line of her email stated that she was emailing us at Bread Beckers to say that this bread has been a miracle in her life. Well, that statement certainly got my attention, as I am sure it has already gotten yours. So without further ado, I want to introduce Barbara and let Barbara tell her story. So Barbara, welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. Just thank you so much for joining me today to share your amazing story. And I thought we could just start with, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Thank you so much, Sue Becker, for allowing me to be on your show. I truly feel blessed and honored to be able to speak about something that's very, very real in my life and that's been happening, and that I just felt compelled to let you know and Bread Beckers know truly what happened to me. And the changes it made, even in the last couple months, 4 months, it's made huge, significant changes in my health. So I am from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Yes, good old Lancaster, Pennsylvania, one of the oldest inland cities in the United States of America. And yes, Amish country. There's a lot of Amish around me. There's a lot of farms. There's a lot of wheat fields. There's a lot of fruit trees. I live out here in the country now, and I love it. Oh. And I'm truly very blessed. And again, thank you for allowing me to be on your show.
Well, you are certainly very welcome. And just that description, I'm like, okay, I need to take a trip to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It sounds absolutely beautiful. I think I would be in heaven there.
Yes.
Yes.
It's the garden of the United States. Here they call it the garden town or county. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It just sounds beautiful. But now, you've had some pretty significant health concerns over the years. In fact, a health scare, if you want to call it that. Share a little bit about that.
A little bit about myself. I'm a Christian woman and was born and raised in a Christian home. And I was in the hospital setting since my early 20s. I was a nurse's assistant and also obtained a nursing license around 2013. And I learned a lot about health actually outside of the institution. So I realized how much the institution was, it has some positives, but there's definitely a lot more you can learn in education outside of that institution. But unfortunately, I fell into a situation where 2017, I woke up and I could not get out of bed. I was trying to sit up. I was blacking out. And it was, I tried to not be afraid as a Christian woman. I was sitting up, blacking out, sitting up, blacking out. And so my family called, the ambulance. They took me in the ambulance. I was praying in the ambulance, and they took me to the hospital, and they ran some tests. They were very calm in the emergency room, which I really appreciated that. I think the emergency personnel are so, most of them are so trained in how to deal with situations. And I thank the local hospital for being calm, because I was feeling like, oh, what's happening to me? Did I have a stroke? Did I have, am I literally dying right now? So I was in the hospital and they were very calm. They ran tests and they said, there's something a little bit a little bit wrong, a little bit off on your EKG. Your ST waves are slightly abnormal. They're abnormal. So we want you to see a cardiologist. So we're going to give you a referral to a cardiologist, and but you are stable enough to leave the hospital. So I was thankful for that. And so I left the hospital, went to a cardiologist. He did a lot of Holters. He's an amazing cardiologist, very thorough, very intelligent. And he's like, you have a condition called Sick Sinus Syndrome, which is basically the pacemaker of the heart isn't working correctly. And I would like to put a pacemaker in. And at 30, I just turned 36. At 36 years old, I felt in my spirit. Now, again, I'm a Christian, so I like to be led by the Spirit. And not by fear. So I felt in my spirit, I don't sense that something is wrong with my heart. I feel that it's deeper. And I actually declined in having that surgery done with the pacemaker. And so I decided to seek the face of the Lord, to stay in faith, not to live in any fear, and to pray and ask the Lord what is wrong. So my brother, he's 2 years younger than I am. And, I'm an 80s child here, born in the 80s. So my brother passed away at age 20 of hypertrophy, left ventricular hypertrophy, which is an enlargement of the left heart muscle. And he had symptoms. So he had racing heart rate. He was feeling a little funny in his head. He did see a cardiologist. He looked healthy, but he wasn't healthy. And so I think what happened was the cardiologist was like, you look healthy. I think you're fine. And so he actually passed away about a month after he saw a cardiologist and of a heart attack. And he was playing soccer. He just fell. And I'm really thankful because I feel in my heart that this is going to help people. That's why I was so thankful that you asked me to talk on your show, because I feel in my heart that this is going to help people that have had cardiac problems and that have even immune issues and are sickly, all sorts of things. So,
but I can see why you were concerned, because you feel like, okay, wait a minute, a heart issue happened to my brother and he passed away.
Right.
Yeah. And we can give in to fear when things like that happen, and almost rightfully so. But man, I just admire you so much for seeking the face of the Lord. But go ahead, finish.
Thank you. And I know that you're a Christian woman yourself, and I truly am thankful for your ministry and you and your husband. It's been so life-giving. So it was one of those situations where I feel that the grace of the Lord gave me the faith. I look back on it now and I think, how did I even get through that? It's very scary. I wasn't scared at the time when I was blacking out. I just wasn't scared. He gave me that grace. And so, I had 5 ye's of my life. Now, these are the prime years of my life. I'm thinking, not married, how's my life going to turn out? But I didn't go into that. It was like, you're fighting for your life right now, and you got to stay focused, and you got to seek the face of the Lord and just trust him. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I had no true answers. I just knew that my heart wasn't functioning correctly. So I sought the face of the Lord, and I was very sick for about 5 years. Very sick. I was in bed almost all the time, very weak. I had a lot of dizziness. I had vertigo. My eyes were moving, were involuntarily eye movements, which was strange. I went to see a lot of doctors during that time just to get tests and stuff. And I stayed pretty sickly for about 5 years, but I still sought the face of the Lord, didn't want to get a pacemaker. And I'm going to be raw here, because I feel that there's a lot of sick people out there. And I was praying. I said, Lord, should I say this? And I think I'm going to say it.
You just say it.
So 5 years went by, and there was a moment in time where I said, you know what? It was almost like I let go. I didn't have the strength to almost go. It's just like, I let go. And I talked to my cardiologist about this. I said, do you have patients that ever say that, they feel like they're kind of going in and out of, passing away, coming back? And he said, oh, that's very typical of a heart patient. And I can tell you, I understand being on the verge of passing away. I felt my spirit kind of going in and out, and it's not fearful. It's just the way it is. So 5 years went by, and something happened where a family member had a dog, and long story short, this dog was unfortunately infested with tapeworm. So they gave our entire family a tapeworm medication. And I thankfully had an answered prayer. I went to the bathroom, and I had a situation with tapeworm. And so I thought, well, what is this? And I never realized that I had this, but I immediately started to get healthier. I started to gain weight. I actually gained 40 pounds after that, and which showed me that the Lord was showing me that health is a multi-dimensional thing. It's not just one thing. It can be several things. So I started to feel healthier after that, but I only felt about 70% of health. So about 40% of my health was still weak. I still felt tired. I still felt lethargy. I couldn't drive. My driving went away. The dizziness, the vertigo, all of that. I just still had the symptoms, but a part of me was gaining health. So I saw that as an answer to prayer, but I felt in my spirit that I was not there yet. So as time went on, I got into herbal medication. I got into herbal stuff. I really went on a clean diet. I took out all synthetic foods, any foods that had additives. I cut them out, and I started to feel healthier and healthier. But again, it wasn't there yet. So about 4 months ago, I prayed and I said, Lord, I ask you for wisdom in food. And really, in the next 24 to 48 hours, I saw this man milling with a grain mill, a hand grain mill. And he said, do you know that the flour that you get only has, basically the endosperm of the flour? And that right there, it was like a huge light bulb went off in my head. And I said, what? Because I like to bake.
What?
Yes. And I said, I've been deceived. So I put in that under YouTube, and your program came on, and you laid it out so logically and clearly. And it was almost like the clouds spread apart and the sun came through. And it was like, this is huge. I knew it in my spirit. I went out the next day, got wheat berries, grinded them up in my coffee grinder, and I baked a loaf of bread. And that day, that evening, my entire body, I felt warmth going through my entire body. I felt this energy in this, and I'm serious. It was in the first 24 hours. I felt
that's amazing.
Yes, I felt vitality. I felt warmth. I was sitting on my chair, and I said, "This is absolutely amazing." And I knew that something happened to me, and I started to research it because I like to research things. I'm a digger, digger discover.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah.
I noticed that. And so I started to dig, and I saw that low thiamine can cause a ventricular hypertrophy, which my brother had, and the beriberi and the wet beriberi. I believe that my brother, in all the research that I see, passed away from this. And I believe that this wisdom has set me to a level where not only is my health going to be 100%, but it's going to make me a strong person and full of zest and vitality for the rest of my life. because my driving came back, my vitality came back, my energy came back, my zest for life came back, even my I had no cognitive decline, but I noticed that I don't want to, it's almost like a semi level of consciousness, right? Where it took me higher. It took me to a higher level of consciousness where I can think, even my agility, my movements, it's just quicker, And I said, this is not only going to bless people, but it is the wisdom that God gave Brett Becker Ministries to heal not only his flock, the Christians, but the world. And I knew it in my heart. I'm sorry, I just went off in a huge...
No, it's powerful. And I think sometimes people don't understand, but when someone as sick as you were, weak, tired, and you had cleaned up your food, but you were still missing something. And there was a piece of the puzzle that was missing, and it was bread. And that B1, thiamine, that is critical. That is critically important. And B3, of course, niacin is so important for the function of the heart, not to mention vitamin E. One of the richest food sources of vitamin E is the wheat germ part, which they take out.
Absolutely.
And we lose those fatty acids. And I know Dr. Wilfred Shoup, world-renowned cardiologist, he used vitamin E to treat his heart patients. And he wrote many, many books on his use for vitamin E, but and never talked about milling. He wasn't writing about milling your own grain and going back to all that. But he commented that when bread started being fractured, in other words, the bran and germ removed, that's when heart disease, high cholesterol, faulty clotting, abnormal clotting of the blood happened, and that he traces it. He makes the connection of the bread. That is just so powerful. No, your story is powerful. And, as surely as we're physical beings, we're spiritual beings. In fact, we're more spiritual being than we are physical beings. We're spirit beings living in a physical body.
True.
So it only makes sense that when you find physical health, your spirit reacts too. So yeah, that's powerful, Barbara.
Well, praise God. And I truly thank you for being submissive to his spirit and listening, because the ministry of Brett Becker's was what the Lord took me to, and my top drawer has all grains. Now I eat bread every single day.
Yeah.
And I eat it once a day. Because I don't have I don't have kids and a family here, but I do eat it every day, and it's strengthening. I can tell. I think I missed 1 day or 2 days. Well, no, 1 day. I can tell. And so I believe that I probably had a deficiency in thiamine and other B vitamins and E, and you having a chemistry background, and I took some chemistry classes. I knew that the synthetics that were fortifying in the foods were not, the chemical structure isn't the same as the natural.
Right.
And so even when people are getting the fortification, it's not the same. It's not the real. And so I believe that many of the diseases today are related directly to not freshly milling the bread. And just like the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread. And I believe that that's multidimensional, where he says Christ daily. And I believe that he's giving us wisdom where he wants us to eat his bread daily.
Yeah.
And we're talking wheat. The king of wheat is the wheat, or the grain,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So I like to go into studying an Internet Archive, or archive.org is a great resource to go to look at old books of the 1800s. And so I was reading these medical books, and they were saying, pelagra was, they said that it was a disease because of the diet was based in corn maize.
Mm-hmm.
And they all the links. And so people that were eating a diet that was the basis is corn were getting this pelagra. And so, and the Europeans that came over to Mexico, they were seeing that they were slightly weaker, smaller, a little more frail. So yeah, there's a lot of research out there that points in the direction of freshly milled bread.
Yeah, pelagra is very interesting to study. Research on it, especially older research during that time. And it's some of the studies I read, it said the southeastern United States was particularly plagued by pelagra. In fact, the first case of pelagra was diagnosed here in Atlanta because our two main bread crops were wheat and corn. And so when they started sifting the bran and germ out, we lost the vitamin B3, the niacin, which prevents pelagra. So then corn is not a real viable source for vitamin B3. So we lost our food source, and it was a significant issue. In fact, one study or one article I read said that Georgia, where I'm from, and South Carolina were particularly plagued by pelagra. And it even went on to say that pelagra is known as the disease of the 4 Ds, dysentery. So lots of GI issues, dermatitis, skin issues, dementia, mental insanity, and then death. People were actually died from pelagra. But the article said that the mental institutions in Georgia and South Carolina were literally overflowing. They did not have enough beds to house the patients. So we're not talking about a case here or a case there. In fact, the first year, I believe it was 1905, 30,000 cases of pelagra in Georgia. It was, in fact, that's where the first case was diagnosed. So this is significant. Supposedly, we stopped pelagra and beriberi with the enrichment process of adding that synthetic B1 and niacin back in. But I always have to ask, have we really? Beriberi is a nervous disorder, and pelagra, I've already discussed what that is. And how many nervous disorders do we have in our country today? How many skin issues? How much GI disturbances? How about, mental insanity and dementia? Could it be our bread?
And being in the hospital for so long, I've seen a lot of sick people.
Yeah.
And there's too many sick people. And, the chemical structure is different with folate versus folic acid.
Yes.
It's not the same thing. So it's not going to be, this is the deception that I saw was, fortification doesn't cut it. And we need to, his burden is light, his yoke is easy. He doesn't make things he makes it very simple. And so if we go back to where, the staple of our meals was bread back, in early America. And that's what they had on the table was the freshly made bread. And so my diet right now is, okay, my staple is bread at this point. And it's going to be like this the rest of my life.
Yeah.
The staple is bread. And then I have these, side things like the vegetables and the, fruits, the vegetables, the cheese.
Yeah.
Those to me are side things.
You're talking my language. People ask me about how much bread do you eat? And I'm like, every day, every way. My meal planning centers around bread.
Absolutely. So, and it works and it's making me strong. I can feel my driving has gotten back almost to perfect. I drive these country roads perfect. I don't drive highways, but I'm very thankful that my zest and vitality and energy is back.
Yeah.
And so I know everybody knows their baseline, and that's why people can't. One of the biggest things that people do is they say, "Oh, you're not really sick." Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. They make fun of people like that.
Yeah.
Oh, you just get up and do. Yeah. No, if they're saying that they don't feel good, listen to what they're saying, because they're telling the truth. And these things, I believe, if people start to eat the way that God designed for us to eat, that these symptoms will go away. If you look at the doctrine of signatures, where they used to look at food based on what body part it would help. The wheat berry looks like a person. If you look at it under a microscope, it has like hair on the top,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It has like almost like a little womb. So it's showing us that, this is a full body meal here. And Jesus, as you have stated, our Lord and Savior, he equated himself with the bread of life, the sustenance that keeps us alive.
Yeah.
So the enemy said, he tempted with bread. He said, and Jesus says, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word. So our main source is Christ. And that's how I got my answers. It wasn't that I went to the medical community. It was, I went to the Lord and he said, okay, this is, in my spirit, this is what you do. This is where I want you to go. The healing took years, but you know what? If anybody that's listening is sick or sickly or discouraged, be patient. It's in his timing. It's not our timing.
Yeah.
And he will give you the answers if you seek him. So this is the first time I've done anything like this. So hopefully I'm
Oh, it's great. Your story is great. So like you said, it does take time, and you peeled off the layers, getting rid of parasite, a tapeworm, that's big, herbal remedies, and then getting a clean diet. You were getting your body stronger and stronger, but then the bread just like took you over the top, it sounds like. And that's just amazing. You also mentioned that your skin looks better, you feel stronger. I just think that is just absolutely great. And I know that you're going to just keep getting stronger and stronger. So it's been about 4 months now. It took us a while to connect. I think when you first emailed me, you had only been milling a couple of weeks and you were already feeling stronger and better. So now you're about 4 months in.
About 4 months in, and I'll say the skin, the coloring, that's something that I noticed. I look at before and after pictures of my own picture. In fact, the picture that I sent you to show, hey, this is what I look like, a face behind the name. That was actually a couple days after I started the milling process and eating. I noticed my coloring started to come back. I wasn't, I guess, pale or gaunt. Something that I noticed about, being sickly, the coloring is a little off. The energy is a little down. There's signs and symptoms of being just not fully a healthy person.
Right.
And I definitely had them. And I try not to get, discouraged. I just try to keep on the path of faith, not going into a realm of fear,
right,
where it's like, oh, that's something else. The world wants people to identify with their illness. Like, oh, I am a this and I am a that. That's a trap. That's a trap. We can go off on this, this is where my label is, and
oh, yes.
I put that to the side and I didn't identify with what they said was going on with my body.
Yes.
I knew that I wanted to get healed and I knew that I wanted to get better.
Yeah.
And I don't put anybody down who says, identifies more, because everybody's going through their own process, but that's something that I believe the world is trying to sway people into identify and say, you know what, ALS is it's a permanent disease and it's never going to get. That's not true. I believe ALS, MS, even diabetes, a lot of neurological disorders is related to the bread. And I did a deep dive, and the thiamine is connected to ATP production with the Krebs cycle. When you have a dysfunctional Krebs cycle or ATP production, you're not getting the myelin sheath isn't being produced on your nerves.
Yes,
so you're getting a cell death, apoptosis, and so the myelin sheath is getting destroyed. And so they did studies, with beriberi and pelagra and whatever it may be, beriberi definitely, and they did autopsies and they did see the myelin sheath. They saw all of that and they identified it. So yeah, there is a link, and and again, This is my opinion. I will never say that I'm putting out medical advice, as we all know. This is just my opinion. ALS, MS, any neurological, even mental health, anxiety, depression, even psychosis, which, mental institutions, heart disorders, weakness, fatigue, neuropathy, all of those, I believe, fall under, and even more, even our immune system with ATP, with thiamine, all of those fall under the umbrella of not eating the foundation of our diet, which is freshly milled baked bread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. It's always refreshing to hear it from someone else. And I love your passion, your study, your background. You understand it, and it's real. It's very, very real. And I appreciate what you said, and it's not to condemn anyone, but you didn't own your diagnosis. You didn't deny it. And that's really different. You didn't deny it, but what it led you to was to seek the face of God.
Amen.
And I think that's where we're falling down a little bit as Christians, going, wait a minute, God, I'm going to seek you for wisdom first and go from there. And I'm not saying don't go to doctors and don't get help, but we've got to get to the root of the issue. And sometimes that's not always the case in typical medical treatment. So I just love that. It's very refreshing. Like I said, you didn't deny, but you didn't say, this is who I am. You said, okay, God, what do we do about it? I'm very humbled, very blessed that an answer to your prayer, God used me in that way. And so it's very, like I said, very humbling. And at the same time, it's a real blessing. It's just a real blessing. So I have to ask you, you're not still using a coffee grinder, are you? Do you have a mill now?
That's a great question. So my bread is, I would call it, it's basic grainy bread. It's a coffee grinder, and I have a hand mill.
Yeah.
I am going to be investing in a regular mill, and I'm going to look at bread bakers, at what you guys have. It works for me now, but in the long run, I do want to mill, and it's going to make a more, the bread that you would typically eat, that it's a little more fine grain.
Yeah.
May I mention something that came to me when I was watching your programs? There is a big push right now, and I have to say, I think it's very dangerous. In fact, I called the FDA about it because I wanted to get their opinion on why, what's going on with this whole situation where they're really pushing this high protein, all meat diet.
Yes.
And they're saying get rid of all carbs, and they're slandering bread pretty much. But it's bearing false witness. But they're making bread out to be the bad guy. And so I talked to a scientist at the FDA, and he said, yeah, the Krebs cycle, he goes, 100%. Because I took a little chemistry, and I understand the need for carbohydrates, like sugars, and also protein.
Yeah.
So what's essentially happening is they're pushing this all meat diet, which will eventually kill a person. And this is why. Okay. So when someone eats all protein and they have no sugar, no carb, what ends up happening is the blood will, the vascular system, so there's your intervascular and the outside of the vascular system. And so the protein is what pools nutrients and within the vascular system, and sugar puts it outside. So that's why they hang, if someone has edema, you'll hang protein in order to get that extra fluid from the interstitial cells into the vascular system. So what ends up happening is if you eat all protein and that's it, what they've been lying about is they're calling it the keto flesh, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm losing all these toxins, and I'm, I feel a little nauseous, but that's a good thing." What's actually happening is you're losing all this sodium and potassium. You're getting it flushed out real quick from the body. It could cause a heart attack, and it could cause kidney damage and failure, and eventually death. So all that protein is pulling the fluids from your interstitial organs into the vascular system, and it's very dangerous. So what bread does is it's a balance. Bread will eat bread. It actually balances that Krebs cycle where you're keeping enough protein and carbs in your body that your whole body is able to have normal fluid shifts and balance. The real bread has protein in it. It has carbohydrate. It has 40 out of 44 vital nutrients. And the store-bought flour, which isn't real bread, which isn't real flour, it's just the endosperm, it's starch, it's basically just starch and gluten. That's why today people are calling people that eat a lot of bread, they say, oh, they have wheat belly. Well, wheat belly is because you're just eating a lot of that gluten and starch that's really supposed to feed. Right. It's supposed to feed that germ within the seed. Right. So our bodies were not designed to just eat the endosperm and that's it. That's why people are getting bloaty. They're getting I call it looks like that metabolic syndrome where, you see people walking around, they look puffy, they look big, they look swollen. That's directly related to just eating the starch, the flour from the store, So all that flour within the store is, I hate to say it, useless. And this is why I say that, because like you said, in Proverbs, it says, be careful when you eat at the king's table. Don't desire his or her delicacies.
Right.
That's deceitful food. So, this metabolic syndrome, diabetes, or obesity, all of that is also under the umbrella. In fact, I believe that anybody that's sickly out there, if they eat this true freshly milled bread the way God designed it, I believe that your immune system will boost up. It'll boost up to even fight off maybe the parasites or the viral infections or whatever that may be. So you're in a win-win situation eating freshly milled bread.
Yeah. Well, I know what I tell people because I get emails all the time. I have this disease, this diagnosis. Will this bread help that? And I'm like, I don't know that it's going to. There's lots of layers and lots of factors, so you can't claim that it's the cure-all for everything.
Right.
But I say it will definitely improve your quality of life. It will get you on a right track. It will so nourish your body that maybe you then can be well enough that you can find, what's going on. And so it's powerful to me. I know some people don't like it when I quote the older writings, but I love Sylvester Graham. He was a preacher and a doctor of his day in the 1860s, I think it was. And white flour was coming on the scene, and he would just really decried it. I mean, he was like, it is terrible. And I quote him often, and he said, I have never seen one disease that I couldn't cure with freshly ground whole grain and flour. And of course, he started a university, a school where he only allowed freshly ground flour, and it came to be called Graham flour, which Graham crackers. He made a flatbread, and that's where we get Graham crackers, which Graham crackers today are nothing like what Sylvester Graham made and promoted. But when you said that, I thought of Sylvester Graham, how he said that, and it's healing. And I think, Barbara, the real issue is that so many health professionals are not differentiating between wheat, real whole grain wheat, the kernel of wheat, and the bread that's in the store. They're calling that bread that's in the store, they're saying wheat. That is bad. Wheat is bad. No, that bread is bad, but that is not wheat. It came from wheat. And I think the best analogy there that God gave me was I held up a piece of paper one day and it was like, what is paper made of? It's made of wood, right? Where do we get it? Paper mills, they cut down trees and they turn it into paper. But you would never look at a piece of paper and say that that's a tree.
Good analogy.
Yeah. Why are we saying bread in the store is wheat? It came from wheat, but it is so denatured. It has been so compromised. And no amount of enrichment has ever returned it to its full nutritional value.
It's
never have they put vitamin E or the fatty acids or anything back in. So, well, it sounds like you and I could go on and on and on forever. I think we're kindred spirits, and maybe I would love to pick your brain some and
yes, I agree.
Everything. But I just I know I can tell in your heart you're wanting to give God the glory for answering your prayers. I just think that's amazing.
Amen.
I think of Psalm 104, verses 14 and 15, and it tells us that God causes the earth to bring forth food, and he gave us bread to strengthen and nourish the heart. And of course, Jesus compares himself to bread, saying, I am the real bread of life. He who comes to me shall be satisfied. And I think it's so encouraging, refreshing to hear someone like you that said, I was eating clean. I eat the fruits. I eat the vegetables. I eat real food. I got rid of the processed stuff.
Yes.
But I still wasn't well until I added this dynamic.
No.
And I just want to thank you for sharing your story, sharing so much more than just your story, your wisdom, your background, your training has really helped you to understand. I just want to thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I hope today for everyone listening that you find not only real bread made from freshly milled flour, but the real bread of life, Jesus Christ. And Barbara, if there's any last words of encouragement you would like to share before we close, feel free to share whatever God puts on your heart.
Well, thank you. And I agree. There is a kindred spirit going on because your passion for the Lord, you are highly intelligent and you love to give glory to the Lord yourself. And I can feel the heart that you have for the Lord, that you love him. And that's so inspiring. And you and your husband and your family, what came to me was Joseph. And I know that you mentioned Joseph in some of your videos.
Yeah.
What came to me was Joseph, and that God gave you and your husband and your family the wisdom that will not only change a nation, but will change the earth.
Wow.
And this wisdom is spreading far and wide. And I was praying before this podcast. I said, Lord, I've never done anything like this. Help me, and I'm just so thankful and honored that you asked me to be on your podcast. And I truly thank you for asking me. And this has been a joy for me. And please come to Lancaster County sometime and take a vacation up there.
I'm ready.
Unfortunately, I did not have freshly milled grain growing up around farms. Never had it. I went to the local stores, but I think this ministry is teaching. In fact, I've used this wisdom to teach Amish people.
Yeah.
I've been telling the Amish community, I said, do you know about freshly milled grain wheat? They say no. And I said, listen. And so I'm actually spreading the word to the Amish community.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Right there in wheat country, they're growing the wheat and not using it the way God and wanted them to. Well, invite me there, and we'll invite them in, and we'll teach them. Yes. So that would be wonderful. So thank you again for sharing, just being real and raw, as you say, and vulnerable. And I hope everyone listening has been encouraged to seek the Lord, Don't just take diagnosis at face value. We're not saying deny it or not seek medical help, but seek the Lord. He will give you wisdom. He promises that in His word. Have you ever left a conversation with someone and thought of so many other things you wish you had said? Such is the case with my It's the Bread interview with Barbara Davis. She emailed me to express that she had forgotten to mention a few things that she had meant to share. She gave me permission to share this part of her testimony as well. So before we close this episode today, I want to read to you the rest of Barbara's story. Dear Sue, I want to thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your podcast. Bread Becker's ministry is such a blessing to this earth, and I truly believe in the health benefits of freshly milled bread. I wanted to mention several things that I did not mention on the podcast as we were discussing things. My bowels. I used to believe that mild constipation was a normal part of digestion and elimination. A day after eating the bread for the first time, I had a bowel movement and future ones that didn't produce any discomfort, bloating, or feeling of fullness in the stomach. Since I do consume this bread daily, my stomach shrunk down to a really good size, and I noticed my stomach didn't seem distended. Weight loss and extra water retention gone. Many people don't like talking about bowel movements, but being backed up can create a toxic environment in the body and sickness. So the benefits I have seen in the last 4 months have been life-changing. Skin color is much better. Bowel movement changes. More energy, less tired, more alert. I had some lower back stiffness that cleared. Seems like my brain is functioning at a higher level since tiredness and lethargy left. Feeling a strength and vitality that I haven't felt before. Most beneficial is the heart strengthening aspects. I feel my heart is stronger. So I wanted to discuss the digestive system on the podcast, but that part was missed on my end. As part of your show, if you want to add these points to your podcast, feel free, since I had not mentioned them during the show. I think you can all sense the pure joy Barbara is experiencing from finding this renewed strength and health from one amazing food, real bread. So my hope for you today and every day is that you may find this joy as well. You know, as you listen to these stories, may your heart be encouraged that you too might find health and wellness in one of God's perfect provisions, real bread. Until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.